Hey there, this is Therese Skelly, and I am so excited that you are going to be listening to an episode of the Fiercely Brilliant podcast. Do you like those two words? Fiercely Brilliant. My hypothesis is that you are here for a reason. We all are. Our souls have led us on journeys that have very often taken some twists and turns, and sometimes it's not pretty. Sometimes there's struggle and there's loss and there's challenge, and in the middle of that, there's always a way out. And it's those times that often lead us into our great life and work. So you're going to hear stories in these episodes of myself and other beautiful people that share the journey. They share how they got to the place where they're standing, working in their brilliance, and being the powerful leaders that they are. So stay tuned and enjoy this episode. Hey, this is Therese Skelly, and I'm super excited. This is another episode of the Fiercely Here Women in Business podcast. And today, I'm bringing in the big guns. I'm bringing in one of my best, dear, delightful women that I adore and love. You know, lots of people in the business world say, oh, I'm bringing my friend so-and-so. We really are friends, like for real. Like for years, years. We have gone through so many iterations of ourselves and our businesses, and Michele is one of my dear, close business buddies and dear, delightful women that I just adore. And so when I thought, like, gosh, who do I want on this show? Because this show is where I bring women on who are going to tell their stories. They're going to tell you the journey stories. They're not going to spin bullshit and tell you all the great things. Of course, she's got a bunch of great things. But what I want you also to hear is how women pivot, how women follow their hearts, and how they make decisions that sometimes seem crazy to follow their truth. And there's nobody better at that than Michele. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I am so glad I am here as well. So I'm delighted to support you in this new venture. So yay.
Yay. Thank you. Okay. Well, so I'm going to just read the official bio. Of course, I gave you the Therese loves you sort of bio, but there actually is life outside of Therese and Michele's relationship. So let me give you the real world version of what Michele does. So Michele Pariza Wacek is a best-selling, award-winning fiction and nonfiction author. On the fiction side, she writes psychological thrillers, mystery, suspense books, and has a popular book blog. On the nonfiction side, she's written 5 books in the Love-Based Business series that share how to sell more with love and build a solid, profitable business on a foundation of love. And I gotta say, I'm gonna be an author in Michele's series, so I'll be the 6th book, right?
You are.
I am the 6th book. Yeah. In addition, she owns a copywriting and marketing company that has sold $50 million of products and services over the last 8 years. Think about that. Michele has been responsible for writing and marketing for people that have sold $50 million. This woman knows her stuff. And if you want to find her, you can go to michelepw.com. Now that's cool. But what do you really do? Like that's up here. Tell us like how you work, because part of your story is a transitional story. But yeah, what is it that you do today?
So what I one of the ways I've pivoted that I don't think I actually said it to you like this, but I sort of pivoted from being like one just offering copywriting services to now which is what I did, done for your copywriting services for 2 years, to being a serial entrepreneur. So I know it is kind of funny because, I'm one of those people that would have said, pick a horse and ride it. Actually, right, I didn't first say that. That was one of my clients, but I agreed with it because it is a lot more difficult to not pick a horse and ride it. But these things go, sometimes, just because it's easier doesn't mean it's the path you can take.
Absolutely.
So I still have the Done For You copywriting. I'm still offer copywriting training. I've got that. And I've got the Love-Based Copywriting books, which is how the whole nonfiction Love-Based Business series started. And then I also am doing Love-Based Publishing, like you said. So getting more into the book publishing. And also, I'm really taking a stand that all your business marketing problems can be solved with a nonfiction book, because a nonfiction book can really just do everything. And so that's one of them. And then I've got the fiction novels. And part of the reason why I can take a stand like that with the nonfiction books is, in our industry, there's a lot of there's a lot of emphasis on the bestseller, getting a bestseller,
Right.
which is great,
Right.
but it's not difficult to do for nonfiction categories in Amazon. And then after you get the Amazon bestseller, there's no talk about how to market your book after that.
Right.
So other than maybe to give away your book for free. So I've seen that and do like a complicated Facebook funnel and give your book away for free. And while that can work, I'm not saying it can't work. It can work. My philosophy is a little different because I believe we should be selling our nonfiction books and doing it that way. And I had to go to the fiction. That's one of the reasons why it's actually really good that I do sell fiction and nonfiction. I have 5 published novels out, and they are selling.
So crazy.
And part of the reason why yes, it is. It's
so cool. Like, let's just punctuate that. Like, I've got 5 published nonfiction. You know what I mean? Like, let's just y'all just hear that. The woman's got 10 books.
Yes.
Published,
5 fiction,
selling. Because wait till you hear the journey. Because you're going to hear the journey in a minute, how she got here and what it took to get her here, right? It was a big journey, but keep going.
Oh yeah. So I had to go to the fiction side because in the fiction world, obviously the emphasis is on selling books. So that's where I learned how to sell an actual book that has a price tag on it, not just give it away for free. So I'm actually bringing all of that knowledge back to the nonfiction world and learn and teaching everybody how to do it. So that's kind of what it is. So it's fiction books, love-based publishing, which is not only helping people publish in the love-based business series, but also I can help you with just getting a book published and marketing your book, and then copywriting, because we always need copywriting.
Always. It beautifully goes together. It really does. And shameless plug, that's why I'm super excited to have my book with Michele, because there are a lot of people that do book shepherding and get your book, but that's where it dies, right? Like, yay, you're the bestseller, woohoo. And then you're sitting with 2,000 books at home in boxes and nobody wants them. But Michele actually knows how to do that. That's why I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm happy to be her author.
Yes.
Number 6. Yeah. So.
Well, and Sean too. So yeah. So actually,
this is true. 7. Okay. I'll be lucky number 7. Okay. So this podcast is called Fiercely Here Women in Business. And you know me, you know this branding for me. You've probably seen the manifesto, but I want to hear, especially as a writer, what's your take? Like, what does it mean to you to be fiercely here in business? And I don't mean just like separate your life from it. It's really like fiercely here. Like, what do those words mean to you?
So I guess for me, it means, fiercely here. I mean, I guess I think of you because you get the fierceness on it. So, but that doesn't help because we don't know you.
Just do like Therese. Yeah, be Therese. No.
Just do like Therese. So I think what I think what it really comes down to, and this is kind of part of what your book is about, which is Love-Based Mission. That's the title of it, which is there's lots of ways to have a business. There's lots of ways to own a business. You can certainly just, have a brick and mortar business or just have a business selling widgets or whatever. And it's not, and you don't have your heart and soul in the business. Right. So there's different businesses depending on what you want. And so I think for some people who are just like having a business just to have a business, like one of my, I remember one of my friends from a long time ago, he had a business where it was pretty successful in Southern California, getting rid of mold out of people's houses. Needless to say, he was not passionate about it, but it paid the bill. So, and it made money and it worked out. So, so you know what, and so if that's what being called is, then there's nothing wrong with that. But it's really when you start to get into a business where you feel like your passion is kind of intertwined, or you're building a business because you have a message and you want to get the message out there, and the easiest way to do that is to build a business around it. Or in the case of me, I taught myself to read when I was 3 years old because I wanted to write stories so badly. So, so when you're driven by something else, like writing for me or having a mission or healing or whatever, it's like you build the business backwards. Instead of the business being the first thing, it's what you do in order to make what you're meant to do work. So I think for people like that, whose the business is almost secondary, that's where you have to be fierce because, when you're selling mold remediation and things don't go very well, you're probably not going to take it real personally. Like, marketing, the marketing doesn't work, like you put a campaign out there, like a big splash and nothing works. And you probably just go back and you're like, well, that didn't work. Okay, let's try
just
this.
to retool it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. There's probably not a lot of like angst or like, oh my God, the universe is telling me to do something else.
I'm not enough. They didn't love me.
It's probably pretty just like, well, okay, so now we learned something. Right. Let's try this. And I suspect, I just have a feeling, especially, it's when you just have a business like that you just really aren't that attached to. You might feel a little bit stressed because you need the money, but you're not going to get into the whole like this is I never should have gone into business.
Right. I'm a fraud. Yeah,
I'm a fraud. All those are probably not.
But I think most of the people listening, most people in my tribe and probably your tribe are mission driven. I mean, you have love-based business, right?
That's exactly it.
So our people are connected. Yeah.
Right. And when you are, you have to be fierce or you lose yourself because that's the problem. Right. So if you can't stand up for your mission, your purpose, that's what it is. So it's like if you can't be powerful and fierce around that, it all falls apart.
Well, the next question was going to say, how do you live this in your life and your business? So you already told us about your business. Is there anything you want to share? Like, I know I'm going to share something about you if you want me to, about how.
I don't know. I don't know what you're going to say.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to out you on national podcast. No, what I respect about you so much, because I've seen your trajectory, right? You are fiercely present to whatever comes up for you emotionally. Like you are fearless about facing any messiness, any feelings that are sucking you under, any like nobody's I've ever seen. Like seriously, Michele, most people are like, I'm uncomfortable, let me get out of it. And you are just fiercely able to just to hold the space and allow, like literally transformation has happened for you so much because of your capacity to tune in so fiercely to what's true for you, even when it's uncomfortable. Is that okay that I just outed you?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and and it hasn't been easy. So, I guess what I want to say to that, because it's true, I'm doing that. And what finally had happened for me was, because I was, as we'll talk a little bit about the story, I was unhappy for so long and I didn't even completely figure out why or what that, but I knew something had to change. And so the thing is that, changing is actually really painful as well. So but the thing is something had to happen. So the thing is that did I want to be uncomfortable staying put, or did I want to be comfortable moving forward? And even though there's a lot of times moving forward, I want to stop and go back. But, that's happened multiple times. I just have to keep, what keeps me going is that if I stop, then and try to go back, I mean, it's really not going to be any better. Right. So, so you have to, I think what I want if you know that you have to make a big shift, and maybe you've already turned the podcast off because you don't even want to hear this because it's too terrifying, but this is the
put your seatbelts on. Here we go.
And we've all been there. You just, in fact, I was thinking about this, the whole, getting comfortable with, I'm going to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. There's somebody I follow on Facebook that's real raw, and I'm uncomfortable with being comfortable. I'm comfortable being, and I'm like, nobody's really comfortable being uncomfortable. So, and when you say it like that, it sounds like you're like uncomfortable, like, God, it's like, my pillow is
well, it's a scratch. Yeah.
I know. It's like, I got a little scratch. That's what it feels like. And it feels like, that's something you can just be like, oh, it doesn't matter. But you know what, when you're really thinking it, you're like, stuff is coming up. You're knee deep in fear or grief and you don't want to feel those emotions anymore. You really don't. You want to move on. But the thing is, the only way through, the only way out is through.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Michele, so if you don't hold emotion, you can't do it.
Well, Michele was, a lot of us in this field are really woo-woo. We come from this like very esoteric, spiritual woo-woo, and not Michele. I Michelle's like daughter of a scientist,
Yes.
Michelle, this was not an easy, some people are like, oh, I just drop into all my angst. Not Michelle. And so I just want to applaud you so much, because that has been part of we're going to talk about her change in a minute, but I wanted you to hear that. Like, you can't just, it's not an escalator. It's not like, oh, I think I'll pivot. Oh, what a glorious ride this journey is. It's so easy. I feel like I'm in first class. Give me the champagne. Oh, hell to the no. It's just like, oh shit, right? It's like this. It's like this. And you get sucked under. And it takes so much courage. And so you're just a beautiful embodiment of a woman that can just be with the shit and the mess and the terror without trying to distract, without trying to spiritualize it or make it, oh, it's all happening for good. You know how to do it. And so you're on the other side of it.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And it's interesting listening to you talk, and I hadn't really put two and together, but my Enneagram is 6, which if anybody of you knows, like I'm a big worrier and all this other stuff. Anxiety, fear is what drives us. But the opposite, the spiritual path that you have, all of them have a spiritual message as well. When you get to, and it's faith. So when I think about it, maybe that's what it is, having faith that even during the dark times, if I stay with the path, I'll get through it. And the thing is that it is worth it. So I also say that too. For anybody listening that's like terrified and wants to turn the podcast off, it can be really difficult at the moment, but overall, you'll be glad you did it.
Well, what I heard you say is, I made the commitment to not go back.
Yes.
Because I couldn't go back. And so, if you're listening to this show really is about hope and inspiration. This is bringing rock stars to you, amazing women that have been on the journey, and we're pulling the wisdom, we're pulling nuggets. And so nugget number 1 is, I don't say you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You got to be willing to be uncomfortable.
That's a better way to say it. That's way better. Willing to be uncomfortable.
Willing, right?
And when you say uncomfortable, you really mean it's really like it's like it's the most horrible thing in the world.
I'm going to die. And so Michelle and I.
Uncomfortable is a euphemism for that.
We're like whitewashing it. It's just like the pits of hell. Like so Michelle and Nancy Marmolejo and I are like daily little text friends, right? We have a little text threads. And so we all do this. We're all like, I'm in the shit, and Nancy and I are like, oh, it's happening for a reason. And Michelle's like, will you people shut up? Or maybe we'll just feel it today, right? It's really funny.
We just gotta feel it and get through it.
But so number 1 is be willing to be uncomfortable. Number 2, make the commitment that you're on the path. Like, it's like you're not going back. Now you can slow it down. You can mitigate it a little bit. You can like, ooh, I got to take a bath or have some wine or something, whatever you got to do. And number 3, get the support. Get support. Because on your own, you're going to hear all those messages of like, but you should be happy. You should be grateful. You should just use LOA and do. And if you don't have people that go, I see you, and who you messy, broken, scared Michelle, I love that version too, just as much, right? Because your grandmas are going to be just, and you're a big fraud. It's never going to work, right? So anyway, so that's just a little bit of a how to do it. And Michelle, you have just such a beautiful story. So can we tell them the big shift? I feel like we've been teasing. We've been doing like good copy, like it's coming, it's
good
coming.
Teasing it, I know. Keep listening.
Teasing. Yes, keep listening. So what's your shift?
So like I said, I taught myself to read when I was 3 years old because I wanted to write stories, and then I promptly like lost my way. I feel like I was like I made this. I did this, and then so I kind of fell into at 16 I was looking for something else to do while I wrote my books. I kind of fell into copywriting. Everybody told me to be a journalist. I'm like, hell no. And then in my 20s is when I kind of discovered this wacky world of copywriting. At the time, because I'm old, there was no internet. So this was all like, junk mail and print ads, brochures.
Yeah.
But still, there's this whole like cottage industry of copywriters who are writing for businesses, because a lot of businesses, they need things written, but they don't always need things written like every day. So just hiring a freelancer makes a lot more sense. So, there's a lot of freelancers out there that do this, and that's what I did for a long time. And then in 1998, I kind of like went back to become the business and decided this is it. I'm going to start a business, freelance copywriter. And then I pivoted again in 2004 and turned it into a copywriting company. And so I've got copywriters, I got a team, I got the whole bit. Now, before that happened, back in 1998, I decided I was going to do things differently because I freelanced on and off for years. But this time, but it's like I would freelance for a while, and then I would go back and get a job, and then I would decide I didn't want the job, so I'd go back and so as I was bouncing around, I finally decided in 1998, nope, doing this. So there was no remember, there's no internet, so there's no big business, internet online for me to take like there is now. Yeah. So at the time, I went to SCORE. And I got a free counselor. So I got my free SCORE counselor, which was a guy who had like a brick and mortar company. Thomas C. Thomas, that was his name. And Tom Thomas. So I don't know what family ever, like when I saw
they were not very creative. They just ran out of options. So I'd give them double it.
Anyways, I never forgot it because I was like, really? That's not a joke. Anyways, he was very nice. And he, when he found out I wanted to be a freelance copywriter, he invited a retired freelance copywriter to come speak to me. And I was so excited about this. I thought, great, she's going to tell me all her tips and I'm going to get so far ahead. And instead, she spent the whole time trying to talk me out of being a freelance copywriter and go back and get my job. And the entire time was like, it's really difficult being a freelance copywriter. It's really hard to make it. You should probably go back and get your job. I can't get my job. Okay, but you could go get your job and you could write on the weekends and nights until you could get it. I can't get my job back. So it was
the dream stealers, right? But see, that's going to happen. Notice that happens all the time when you say I want this. There's always that conflicting voice that said, "Oh, but shouldn't you just have some security and insurance benefits?
Or shouldn't you do this?" Yeah. So we got to the end, and then she says, "Okay, well, I can see I can't talk you out of it. So here's some tips," which were crap, quite honestly. So then when we were leaving, I said, part of the reason why I'm so excited to be a freelance copywriter is I also write fiction. And so now this is going to give me a chance to write novels. And she got this look of horror on her. Don't tell anybody that you write fiction. They'll never take you seriously. And for whatever reason, nothing else.
You took that in, huh?
I took that in. Nothing else I took in. That I took in. So it became my fiction writing became my dirty little secret. So I did write 2 novels, and then I got an agent and a publisher who was interested. It didn't work out. I got discouraged, and I kind of just gave up on the whole thing. And so I didn't write. So that was the thing. So because I didn't really tell anybody about the fiction because I was kind of,
hiding.
I was hiding.
It was shameful, right?
It was shameful. That's the thing. And I didn't even, so it was like this very little secret. And it was shameful. And what I was telling myself was, okay, I'm building up the business. And then once the business is built up to some level, which I never actually set, then I would write fiction. So
this is someday.
Yeah, it was like the someday. It's like, okay, so once I get it, it's like, So then in 2015, my mother died. And basically what happened after my mother died was then I realized that, okay, if I don't actually, it suddenly occurred to me, if I don't actually make time for this fiction, then it's not going to happen. So I can't, it's not just enough to say, I'm just going to build this company up and then it's suddenly going to magically, the time to write fiction is going to magically appear, which is kind of what I was thinking would happen. And I'm like, no, it has to actually happen. And the thing is what was so interesting now that I've got the 5 fiction books. I mean, I published the 2 that I wrote back in the 90s. I wrote 3 more, and they're all up. And the thing is what was interesting with that whole bit is I realized how unhappy I was, and I didn't even know how unhappy I was. And you see, I was so unhappy because I wasn't writing fiction. And the thing is that if you had asked that to me, I would have said, well, I don't have time.
Right.
So this idea was like, where am I going to find the time? And so the thing is that, so it was like this, so it was like, what was I doing? I was doing all this like other self-care stuff, like going, getting massages and doing this help, because I wasn't on the creative fiction part of me. So it's interesting because I actually had more time once I wrote fiction. It was like everything else started to work.
Yeah.
So because then once I started to carve out the fiction time, when I started writing the new novel, was about 6 months before she died. I mean, she was sick. She was diagnosed with cancer in 2012. And so it was about 6 months before she died. And it was interesting because suddenly I just got the hit. It's like, I have to start writing a novel. I have to start writing fiction. And it made no sense. I'm like, what do you mean? I've got a business to run. I've got, my mother's dying. I may have to run back and forth to Wisconsin. What are you talking about? I can't possibly start it, but at that point,
I followed the guidance.
Yeah, I made a commitment to follow the little voice.
That's right. Note this.
So I set the time. I carved out the time. I did it. And yeah, and then it was interesting how everything else worked out.
But hold on. There's a few pieces you're missing here. So that's
the problem.
Oh yeah.
When you know your story, when you know my story better than I know my story.
As a cliff note, hold on. So for at one point, 100% of your income came from retainer clients, copywriting, and your goal is to shift, right? And to have income from fiction. So to move away. And so talk about, because on one hand, it's kind of terrifying. Like, she's a multiple six-figure rock star. Like, Michele speaks all over the place. She's very well known. And that crazy part in you that started at age 3 said, but you got to attend to this. So what was the like the mental gymnastics, or what did you have to do, Michele, to go, I'm willing to let some of this, maybe lose some money or let go of clients while I shift? Because that is terrifying. So I want you to talk about that piece.
Well, I wish I could say that part of what happened was I made a decision that I was going to do this, and I did. And I think it all starts with a decision. And I think it's sometimes, I've also decided, now that I'm on the other side of it, that it's better if you don't know what the decision is going to turn into. Because if I had actually known what I had decided.
It's like having children. You would never do it if you knew the shit they would put you through in the pain.
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because I'm thinking I may, I decided I would rather have just been unhappy and dying inside.
Shh, don't tell them that. No, but that's true. And that's why very often spiritually, we're just given one little step. You get one little crumb, follow that. Like, if we would see like who you have to be, if we see that trajectory, it'd be like, I'm not signing up for that. Are you? Yeah,
no.
So, but you hear in her story, this is so cool. Since age 3, that's 5 decades plus, right? 5 decades. This thing has been with her, calling and calling and calling. And you heard her say that, and you didn't tell that you had some health challenges, like you were breaking down basically. And now that you've said, finally, okay, uncle, I'll do it. You're happier, you're healthier. You have now a business that's working for you. So talk about now talk about the trajectory.
Well, yeah. And the thing is so part of what happened, at least for me, is that once I made a decision, the universe kind of stepped in to help. And so it was a conscious decision to let clients go or to let things go. It just happened. So
it does that, doesn't it? Yeah. And you're like, so that's what part I asked for.
Yeah, and I would have been like, no, I can do it all. But the reality of the situation is that you have to, you as scary as it can be, you do have to trust the process, and you have to just keep forward. And I have made mistakes in the transition, so don't. So there are things that I should have done differently, but overall, if as best as you can, if you just keep following the following and moving forward, you can do this. But I think it really just needs to start with a decision. Like, whatever is calling you, you decide you're going to step into it. Well, and just say yes, and then try to, and then do your best to follow the signs.
Well, give me an example of like a mistake and what you would have done differently, if you're comfortable sharing that.
So I'm trying to. I think some of the mistakes are. I think some of it was probably waiting too long to make pivots.
Right.
So I guess I kind of saw where I was supposed to go, but then I still was resisting. I guess that's what it is. So it's like, so if things are not, so I guess that's one of the things that I'd like to say, because I finally just had to get really kind of ruthless in the last few weeks. And it's like, because there are things that haven't happened that I wanted to have happened. And I finally, it was interesting because I'm on, Elizabeth Purvis email, and she said something like, if something isn't happening, there's something you're resisting. And so I finally was like, all right, so I'm going to listen to somebody smarter than me. And it's like, and I just had to get really ruthless. And it's like, okay, where am I resisting? And the thing is that you know what to do. I know what I should be doing. I can sit there and pretend to be confused. I think that's part of what it is. Like, I think some of it is like, I did do a lot of like, during some of the really bleak times, I would say like, I would ask God, for a sign, and am I on the right path? And a lot of times I'd get no answer, which I don't believe you ever get no answer. I think the no answer was, the thing is that looking back on it, when it is, it's like, it's almost like, what you need to be doing, just go do it.
I'm not telling you, you already know, right?
I know. Yeah. You already know, you just don't want to do it. I want a different answer. So I think that's really what it is. So it's like, I do believe that. And if you truly don't know, the next step will show up. It'll show up pretty fast. But if it's not showing up, it's because you know it and you just don't want to do it. And you're asking yourself, you're asking consultants, you're asking whatever, because you want a different answer. But the reality is if you want to keep going, there is no different answer. You know what you need to be doing.
Well said. So what's it like to have 5 fiction books? Like, now that you're an author of fiction, like, what's that like?
So it's yes, I do love having my fiction books out there. So, it's interesting because one thing that happens is some of my friends who read it, because I write psychological thrillers, and if you want to get a taste of one of them, you can go over to, I've got a free novella on my fiction site. So The Secret Diary of Helen Blackstone. So you can check that out. And it's at so I don't know if you're going to have the link.
No, go ahead.
mpwnovels.com.
pwnovels.com.
So the mpwnovels.com. Yeah, The Secret Diary of Helen Blackstone. And they're psychological thrillers. So it's funny because one of the things that happens is because I write psychological thrillers, I do get people eyeing me like, what are you really thinking about? So I thought you were such a nice.
What's going on down there? That little Minnesota, Wisconsin thing, right? Like,
yeah, I know, you're so nice. What the hell is all this stuff?
Dark, girl. You're kind of dark, right?
Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
that's been the most interesting. But yeah, and it's been so great because some of my biggest supporters and cheerleaders are people in like the who I've known for years. Other people who are associates, and they decide to give the fiction a shot. So they read it and they email me and they're like, oh my God, this is so good. Like, they're surprised.
I just love, because again, I've known you for probably since 2004. Like, we have like seriously 15 years in business together. And you were one of the top marketers. Like, I always look to you, like, what do I do? What's the latest trends? Like, Michelle's brilliant. But the story isn't what you did, it's who you had to become.
Yes.
Like, it really is. Like, you had to step into, because you said, I knew what to do. And it's the dance, like the push pull of like, I want it. Oh shit. I want to do it. Oh my God. It's like that. And so when you're listening and watching to this, I want to normalize that for you. That's like, literally nobody says, I think I'll do it. And then hits it running, so you can expect resistance. Like, you can expect the little, as I call little voices, or the gremlins, like just spinning shit in your head, telling you how scary it's going to be. And how, for me, when I started to step into my healing gifts and using my, which I always have to share my little pendulums in the world. Oh, I was convinced, like, I will have no credibility. They will literally laugh me off the stage. I will never have a client again. And instead it turned out like I'm kind of getting known for that. People come to me for clearing and come to me. But the resistance in the beginning is so potent. So for you, just talk about that, because I think that's a really critical piece. Like, what do you do, or how do you move through the scary parts and then the resistance parts?
So I will say that this changes. So I started out, and it was just kind of stopping and pausing and breathing and feeling. So that was really how it started. And now, because I think I've started adding some tapping and some different affirmation, because I think part of what's happened is I've been traumatized. And I mean, it sounds weird to say that, because it's like, when you think of trauma, you think of like, something more traumatic than simply own business. But I do think that if you've been in business a while and you've had things that haven't worked and they've really bothered you,
yes,
I do think it does cause a certain amount of trauma. especially if you see the same things happening over and over again, if you've got stories in your head. And I do think that it creates a little trauma.
That's
and the
really
thing is
brilliant.
that your brain, and I mean, because I've been talking to my friend Andrea Lee about this a lot, because she's kind of studying that. And the thing is that as she puts it, your brain doesn't really, your brain doesn't differentiate, make a difference between something like, being in a war versus not having a launch work. Even though our logic side says, well, God, of course there's, the war would be far more traumatic. It doesn't really, what happens in the brain is the same. So so now I'm changing some of that, because like now I've got, because I mean, being able to stop and breathe and hold the emotions is work, but now I'm doing more.
Rewire it.
I'm working on rewiring it. So I'm tapping as I feel it. And then I start saying, new affirmations of where I want to go to try to, I guess that's the only way you can do that. You have to actually kind of access that traumatic place, and then you
Beautiful.
And then you put in new information. And that's the only way you can get kind of start rewiring things.
Beautiful. So this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted an episode with an inspirational story and full of tips, right? How to get through it, how to navigate it. So props to you. I feel like we delivered it quite well, my friend.
We did.
So we did.
And someday we're going to have our own Michele and Therese show.
I think we should. We've been saying this for 15 years, or at least 10. So let's make it happen this decade. All right. Well, actually in the 2020 decade. So there's the fiction, and that's mpwnovels.com if you want to get the novella. I'm excited. I'm going to get that. And then what if folks want to find you, like copywriting, because that people need that stuff too. So what do you have in terms of, gift or something for people?
Yeah, so I do have a love-based copywriting template. So if you want to just get started on writing love-based copy, so that's at lovebasedcopywritingbook.com/template. And you can, and it's usually just a free template that you can only get if you buy my book, but I do offer it on certain special podcasts.
Special people. Awesome. Yeah. So you're such a rock star. I just adore you. And I just love to see where you are. I really, it's just heartwarming to see the growth and the joy, because I know the hard struggles. I know even though you were successful, you were empty in some ways with that stuff. And so is there anything else you want to say to the listeners and viewers?
Be patient with yourself. And so, this is, I think we all, and I know I do this all the time. So I think it's just always good to remember to be patient with yourself. Don't compare.
Big one.
Yeah. It's like wherever you're on the path is perfect, and just keep taking, the best you can do is pick yourself back up. And it was interesting because I was at this author conference. This is where mostly fiction writers at this conference. And one of the presenters at the stage said, this whole fiction, she knew people way back when this first started. And she says, the thing is, if you're on this path, it's gonna be up and down, and you're gonna hit the pit. You're gonna think you have everything figured out and it's all working, and then it's all gonna collapse. And you have to pick yourself back up. And she said, I'm sitting here, and then she turned to the presenter next to her. It's like, you're the only one here who's left. I mean, there's a bunch of people who started with us, and they couldn't pick themselves back up. So they left. And so that's the thing. So it's like this idea that it's never going to be a straight line. You're never going to have it figured out, no matter what you think you do. It's going to be up and down. And when you're down, if the only way it's the only way you're going to stay in it is if you learn how to pick yourself back up and keep going.
That's awesome. That's fabulous. And so know that other women have done it. That's why I'm bringing these people out here, right? That's why you get to hear Michele and my story and my other guests. It's been done. If we can do it, you can do it. And reach out. If you need any support, reach out to me. I would be happy to hear what you're going through. So, and we would love if you could leave a review, right? Leave a review. What'd you get out of this episode? So Michele, I adore you. I'm so proud to call you friends. Great, great, great episode. And so thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye.